Hello amigos, this is Pablo Garcia, the engineer photographer. A few days ago, DXO Labs released version 3.3 of the NIK Collection. I think it's a great collection of plugins for Lightroom, Photoshop, and a number of other programs. And with this collection, NIK is also adding a number of different recipes to the plugins. A few episodes ago, I did a review of Silver FX Pro that for me is the best plugin for doing black and white conversions. And then in this episode, we're going to talk about Color FX Pro, which again is a great plugin for giving our images kind of a special touch that is just not possible to do in Lightroom. And NIK has a long history, 25 years of innovation. I first bought this collection probably around 2010, 2011. In 2012, Google bought the company and made the collection available for free, but there's nothing really free in this world. So over time, Google didn't invest back into the collection, and over time, the programs started having compatibility problems with new releases of Lightroom, Photoshop, Windows, and Mac OS, and so on. Then in 2017, DXO bought the product from Google and started investing and releasing updated versions, and now version 3.3 is the latest. And again, for me, is one of the best collections of plugins. So let's go to Lightroom and do a quick review. Here we have this image I took back in 2014. I was in Moscow for work and got myself inside the Kremlin as a tourist, and I took this image from inside the Kremlin looking to the National Cathedral in Moscow. And I edit all my images in Lightroom, and I go to NIK to give it kind of a special touch. So even though this is already a nice image, this is the result after I went to NIK. So this is the before and this is the after. Kind of a nice pastel-like effect that I was able to get with NIK. Here we have this other image taken in Costa Rica in 2013. I was visiting a waterfall with a few friends, zoom in to take a picture of the rocks with all the water falling on top of them. And using NIK, I was able to add additional detail and color to the greens and to the rocks. Again, here is the before, and here's the after. And here's this image that I took in 2015 at Bosque del Apache, two sandhill cranes. I edited this image in Lightroom, I think before we hit the clarity and texture controls, and I wanted to get a little more detail on the two birds. So here is using NIK Detail Extractor. Just look at the body of the two cranes. This is the before, and this is the after. So let's start an image from beginning to end. Here is a flamingo, an image that I took at Bosque del Apache. I already did my regular Lightroom edits. I don't bore you with those. And I just have two recommendations before I go to NIK. One is don't crop your images before you go to NIK, because you may change your mind on how you want your crop. And you can always do that in Lightroom once you come back. The other one is don't apply a vignette in Lightroom, because we have better and more powerful options in NIK to do different vignette effects. So don't crop and don't apply a vignette. However, this time I'm not going to follow my number one recommendation. This image is already cropped, and I'm going to send this crop image so we can make the comparison easier after we do the edit. Let's take this image. All we have to do is edit in Color FX Pro. We're going to select edit a copy with the Lightroom adjustments. Whatever I did in Lightroom is applied to the image. It's going to generate a new TIFF. I'm going to select Pro Photo Format, 16 bits, 300 resolution, and edit. And now it's going to create a new TIFF file and go to NIK. NIK offers many different filters. I think last time I counted them, there were 50 or 55 filters that provide different effects. You know, we have high key effects, we have fog, we have pastels, we have contrast, And all those filters have different controls that we can use to customize the filter to our liking. The other thing that we can do is apply recipes. And recipes are nothing more than 2, 3, or more filters that we want to apply to an image. And for example, if I select this classic portrait recipe, I tell it that yes, I want to replace what I have. You're gonna see here on the right that I apply a dynamic skin softener and a glamour glow. And both of those filters are applied as they were layers. And you can turn them off individually, and you can modify the controls on each one of them. For now, we're gonna process this image from beginning to end, so I'm gonna erase those 2 filters. I'm gonna go to the filter library. You're gonna see some of these filters have a star selected. That means they're in my favorites. So I have a folder for favorites. One of them is brilliance and warm. I like what it does to the image. It just makes the image a little brighter, and I can control the degree of warmth that I want on the image. So this time I'm gonna go, this is too much, something like that. And the effect is being applied to the whole image. So this is before and after. The next thing I want to do is I want additional detail on the flamingo. So to add a filter, if I select a new filter, at this time it's going to replace the filter that I already have. I don't want that. I want add a filter. So add filter, make room for me for a new filter. I'm going to apply detail extractor, and it gave me a lot of detail on the whole image. Here is before and here is after. For now, I'm just going to pay attention to the flamingo. Okay, this is too much. I'm going to reduce these something like 10, 12, 13 points before, after, maybe a little bit more contrast before, after. Now, I want to limit this filter just to the bird. I don't want the filter applied to the background. And to do that, Nik is famous for the technology of control points. So control points is basically an approach that Nik uses for us to build a mask. And in this case, we have 2 options. We can add a control point at 100% opacity to apply the filter, or add a control point at 0% opacity to remove the effect. So we're going to use a combination of those. For now, I'm going to select add at 100%. I'm going to put it on the bird. If you select the little box here on the filter, we're going to see the mask effect. You see, already started selecting the bird. I'm going to add one more, maybe here. I need to turn on that. Okay, so now I have most of the bird selected. I want to select the beak as well, so I'm going to continue to add control points. Turn them on. Okay, and one more. You can select the size, and that tells you the beak effect. Now that selected the bird, but the background still is not at 0% opacity. So I can now apply additional control points in the background. Perhaps one more here. And as you can see, pretty much I have now created a mask where I want the filter to be applied. Okay, so I'm going to turn them off. So now the filter is only applied to the bird. So that's with the filter on, with the filter off. And it just brought up the texture of the fine feathers on the neck of the bird. Maybe a little too much. I'm going to reduce it a bit. The final thing that I want to do is I want to focus the attention in this part of the image. And I had different options for vignettes. One that I like to use is this darken light and center. But first I'm going to do add a filter, darken light and center. And that's similar to the kind of the radio filter in Lightroom. I can select, place the center right in the eye. I can adjust the luminosity of the center and maybe negative luminosity on the outside. So here is the before and the after, almost like the effect of a spotlight centered right on the head of the flamingo, before and after. Not heavy-handed, just kind of a light effect. Now we're done processing this image. Here is the before as we brought it from Lightroom and the after. Again, just a subtle touch that I like to do, but it gives the image, something extra. Finally, we want to save. And with version 3 of the NIK collection, DXO added the ability to use multi-page format in TIFF that allow us to save and then be able to return to the same edits that we had before. All we have to pay attention to is here on the bottom left, there's this little checkbox. We need to enable it. So save for edit for later. It does result in a bigger file, but again, allows us to come back, and I'm gonna hit save. And that is gonna process the image and take us back into Lightroom. So now we're in Lightroom and it brought the image back. And if I wanted to edit this image, all I have to do is use my NIK TIFF and select that image. To showcase that, I'm gonna select a different image. Here is an image I took at Bosque del Apache earlier this year, I think back in January. We had 3 sandhill cranes in the water, a little bit of a scenic shot for Bosque del Apache. And here's the image I had already processed in NIK. Again, the Lightroom version, the NIK version. Let's say that I had changed my mind on the edit, that I wanted to add additional contrast or maybe a different effect. All I have to do now is select the image, edit in, color effects, and the trick is I want to edit the original. I don't want to copy, I want to edit the original, so the TIFF is the one that gets open. So I'm going to edit the original, and it's going to open the multi-page format, reprocess the image, and now give me the option to make changes to the filters the way that I had. As you can see here on the right, I have used a number of different filters in this image: a gradually neutral density filter, a brilliance and warmth, a tonal contrast, a vignette, and additional contrast. And I can add additional filters like what we did with the prior image, or I can go to any one of these filters and change the settings. Maybe the vignette, I want to do it a little darker. Maybe the contrast, I want to do a little more contrast. Or, you want to add a new filter, you can do that as well. And again, at the bottom, you make sure that the little checkbox is selected. You save it. It's going to reprocess the image, take us back into Lightroom, and we can revisit this image as many times we want if we're changing your mind of how the edits are going to work. Well, I highly recommend NIK Collection for you. And if you like these videos, please give me a thumbs up. Take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends about this channel. Send me a comment, and I'll see you next time.